Good morning, students. Today we shall discuss about numerical problems on impulse. Yesterday we have discussed what is impulse. The product of force into time, the force and time, the product gives us impulse. When a large force acts for a short duration of time, it leads to a change in momentum. So this product of force and time is called as impulse, which is also equal to change in momentum. So let us see one example, interesting example. A batsman hits back a ball straight in the direction of the bowler without changing its initial speed of 12 meter per second. Means the bowler is bowling with the initial speed of 12 meter per second, and let us assume that it is moving with constant speed and hits the bat. When the batsman hits the ball, without changing the speed, the ball goes with the same speed back in the direction of bowler, If the mass of the ball is 0.15 kg, that is 150 gram, determine the impulse imparted to the ball. In this problem, force and time duration of contact with the bat are not given. So we can calculate momentum. Final momentum minus initial momentum gives us change in momentum. So change in momentum itself gives us what is the impulse imparted on the ball. So if this is the batsman position, if the bowler bowls from here, the ball comes with 12 meter per second, right? And if it hits the bat, after hitting the bat, it goes to the same opposite direction, 12 meter per second. So we can take this one as positive x-axis and the one towards left as negative x-axis. See, the ball moving towards left. This is the position of bowler and this is the position of batsman. So the bowler is bowling towards left side, so the speed of the ball can be taken minus 12 meter per second because it is towards left side. After hitting the bat, it goes towards the right side in the same direction, in the direction of bowler. So it should be plus, since it is above positive x-axis. Mass of the ball is given. Mass is 0.15 kg. So using this data we can calculate impulse. Impulse on the ball. Impulse imparted on the ball before hitting of the bat with the ball. So this can be calculated as change in momentum. Final momentum Pf minus initial momentum. Pf final momentum, Pi initial momentum. These are the vectors. Okay. So this can be now taken as, I have assumed mass. Let us assume the mass Vm, final velocity as V. So we can write it as m into V minus m into u vector. M into V minus m into u vector. But both the values of V and u are same. Magnitude of V is same as magnitude of u, that is equal to 12 meter per second. And m is given 0.15 kg. Therefore, impulse becomes m into v, that is 0.15 kg into v. V is 12 meter per second. Look at this. This is positive because it is towards the right side. Minus mu, it is towards left. Therefore, I have to take minus 0.15 into 12 meter per second. This unit can be written later. into 12. So thus it becomes 2 times minus of minus becomes plus 2 times 0.15 into 12. So this gives us the impulse. So if you calculate this, 0.15 into 2 becomes 0.3. 0.3. So 0.3 into 12 becomes 3.6 Newton second. 3.6 Newton second. And the direction is towards the bowler. Since momentum is a vector quantity, change in momentum is also a vector quantity, therefore impulse is also a vector quantity. Impulse is also a vector quantity. So let us solve one more problem. So that will be a little different from this problem. Let us solve one more problem. Here there are two billiard balls, both are having same masses. Two billiard balls strike ball with the same speed but at different angles. There are two situations. Here the ball is hit to the ball straight along the perpendicular line. In the second case, the ball is hit to the ball with certain angle of 30 degree. So the ball, when it hits the ball, in both the cases, get reflected without any change in speed. When it gets rebounds back from the ball, the speed remains same. If u is the initial speed, after rebouncing back, it gets the same speed u in the opposite direction. Here also, when the ball hits the wall with certain angle 30 degree, after reflection with the same angle of reflection 30 degree, the ball moves with the same speed. With what speed it hits, it gets reflected by same speed. That is the meaning. Question is, what is the direction of force on the ball? What is the direction of force on the ball in both cases? In both the cases, what is the force on the ball? Second, find the ratio of magnitudes of impulses imparted to the balls by the ball. Calculate the impulse in the first case, calculate the impulse on the ball in the second case, then find out the ratio. I think you got the point. Okay, first let us see the direction of force on the ball due to each ball. When the ball hits the ball, you see the force on the ball due to the ball is normal. Normal means perpendicular to the ball in the first case. Because ball is coming along the normal perpendicular direction to the ball, and when it hits the ball, the ball experiences a force. So force on the ball is along x-axis, perpendicular to the ball in the first case. Second case also, you see, although ball is hitting at certain angle, force on the ball due to the ball, you may think it is at certain angle 30 degree. But when you resolve the components of force along x-axis and y-axis, interestingly, when you calculate the components of force exerted on the ball along x-axis and y-axis, see, this direction we have taken it as x-axis and this direction we have taken it as y-axis. The y components of force cancel each other. You will be left with the force acting normal to the ball. So in both the cases, the answer for one, in both cases A and B, in both cases A and B, the force on the ball is normal to the ball, along positive x-axis, Whereas force on the ball will be in the opposite direction. Force on the ball will be in the opposite direction. Okay, this is first problem. Second one, find the ratio of magnitudes of impulses imparted to the balls by the ball. So, in order to calculate the ratio, you need to extend this diagram. So, this becomes positive x-axis, and this is y-axis. This is negative y-axis. This is negative x-axis. This is positive x-axis. Okay, first let us solve this problem, and then we will come to this. So, impulse imparted in the first case. I think this space is enough to solve here. So, second problem. Impulse imparted to the ball. As we have calculated earlier, impulse is calculated as change in momentum delta p of the ball. So that is calculated as Pf minus Pi, Pf vector minus Pi vector. So look at this. This after reflection, this product of mu becomes the Pf vector. Before hitting the ball, initial momentum Pi is equal to mu. It is along positive x-axis. Final momentum Pf is equal to minus mu. It is along negative x-axis. I think you got it. The directions are opposite. So Pf, I will write it from this minus mu minus Pi minus mu. Speeds remain unchanged. Thus it becomes minus 2 mu. So impulse imparted to the ball is minus 2 mu. You can call this as equation 1. In the same way, now you can calculate for this one. So this is the positive x-axis. Okay, I will write here positive x-axis. So in order to calculate the impulse imparted, in the same way, I can write here in the case B. This is case B. Impulse on the ball. Impulse on the ball due to the ball. Impulse on the ball due to the ball is equal to again Pf vector minus Pi vector. You see here. Now you are understanding what is the exact meaning of vector from this second case. First case was very simple. Now I want to find out what is Pf vector. Pf vector is having, see, this becomes the Pf vector, and this is Pi vector, right? So this Pf vector is making certain angle 30 degree with the negative x-axis. Pi vector is making 30 degree with the minus x-axis. Okay. Now Pf vector minus Pi vector I have to calculate. So Pf vector is having two components. Resolving Pf vector into two components. Draw a perpendicular to x-axis. So you will get x component. This becomes the x component. So what is x component? I can write here Pf cos 30. Pf cos 30, that too with minus sign, because it is along negative x-axis. Minus Pf cos 30. So I will write here minus Pf cos 30 into I cap, because it is along negative x-axis, therefore minus I cap, plus draw a perpendicular to y-axis. When you draw a perpendicular to y-axis, you will get y component. So that becomes Pfy along y component. So it becomes Pf sin 30, that too negative sign because it is along negative axis. So I will write here minus Pf sin 30 j cap I cap j cap. So this becomes Pf vector minus, now you write what is Pi vector. To write minus Pi vector, look at this. I have to extend this Pi vector in this quadrant because it should be moving away from the origin. So extending this, yes, this becomes the Pi vector. Same direction I have drawn continuation of the vector so that we will get it in the fourth quadrant because it is originating from the origin. I have drawn the vector originating from the origin so that I can draw components. Draw perpendicular component. Draw a perpendicular here. So this angle is again 30 degree. Now you see. Now this becomes Pi cos 30 and it is along positive x axis. Therefore, Pi cos 30 will be along positive x axis. And Pi sin 30. So draw perpendicular. So if you draw perpendicular, so this becomes Pf sin 30. Pi sin 30. So Pi sin 30 is also negative. Pi sin 30. So now I write minus Pi vector. Pi vector is x component plus y component. X component is Pi sin Pi cos 30. Pi cos 30 I cap minus Pi this y component Pi sin 30 j cap. Now in this problem, in the given problem, the speed remains same before hitting the wall and after getting reflected from the wall, the speed u remains same. So magnitude of Pf vector and magnitude of Pi vector are same. Here it is given. Pf magnitude is equal to Pi magnitude which is equal to mu. So if you substitute mu, wherever Pf is there you substitute mu and wherever Pi is there substitute there mu or just take it as same. Then if you look at it, it becomes minus mu cos 30 I cap and club this another x component with this. So minus mu cos 30 I cap. Okay. This minus this I have taken out. Now you club j cap. Minus mu sin 30 j cap. See here, minus mu sin 30 j cap minus into minus, minus of minus becomes plus, plus mu sin 30 j cap. You can see here, this y component cancels. Change in y component cancels. This is also mu sin 30. This is also mu sin 30. So mu sin 30 minus mu sin 30 cancels. Therefore, you are left with finally minus 2 mu cos 30. What is cos 30? Root 3 by 2. So it becomes minus 2 mu into root 3 by 2. Root 3 by 2. So this is impulse in the second case. Therefore, impulse in the case of V is equal to minus 2 mu root 3 by 2. Call this equation number second. Now the next part is to calculate the ratio of magnitudes. Ratio of equation 1 to the equation 2. If you calculate, that completes the problem. Therefore, ratio of impulses, that is from with respect to first case and second case, it becomes minus 2 mu divided by minus 2 mu root 3 by 2. So minus 2 cancels, mu cancels, therefore you are left with 2 by root 3. So this becomes ratio of impulses. Okay. Ratio of impulses. So this is how one needs to apply the knowledge of vectors whenever you are dealing with the calculations of force and calculations of impulses, because force and impulses, they are vector quantities. This problem is very important. This will also help you in the next coming topic where we are going to study the collisions. Collisions are going to be of three types. There you are going to understand the meaning of resolving the components and application of the vectors properly. Okay. Now the next one is law of conservation of momentum. What is law of conservation of momentum? You have learned even in the 9th standard. The statement says that in an isolated system, the total momentum of the system of particles remains conserved. Total momentum of the system of particles remains conserved. So I will write the statement first. Law of conservation of momentum. In an isolated system, isolated system is that system where there is no external force acting. When there is no external force acts on a particular system, then we call it as an isolated system. Isolated system is the one where no external force acts. In an isolated system, the total momentum of interacting particles remains conserved. So you need to understand two parts here. One is what is an isolated system, as I told you. So isolated system is a system where no force acts, no external force acts. Where no external force acts. And second thing is interaction. There must be interaction among the particles. There must be interaction among the objects. There must be interaction among the bodies. Whenever there is an interaction between the bodies in an isolated system, the total momentum of that interacting particles remains constant. Conserved means what? Constant. So this is the meaning of law of conservation of momentum. Let us see how it will be established with a simple example of collision of two particles. Collision of two particles. Let us see how one can establish the principle of conservation of momentum. The example is collision of two bodies. We have done this already in the 9th standard. Same thing is repeated here. Only difference is there we did not use the vector notations. Here we are using vector notation. That is the difference. That is the only difference. Now let us consider there are two bodies of mass m1 and m2. This is first one. This is second one. m1 is going with initial velocity u1 and m2 is going with initial velocity u2. Such that the velocity u1 here is greater than u2 and they are both moving on a same line, same path. After some time, m1 collides with m2. The body with mass m1 collides with m2. Because u1 is greater than u2, definitely it is going to collide. As a result of collision, after collision, the velocity of m1 becomes v1 and velocity of m2 becomes v2. So what you have to prove here, during this interaction, whenever there is no external force acting, the total momentum of the system remains conserved. Total momentum before collision must be equal to total momentum after collision. This is what you are supposed to prove. Total momentum before collision is equal to total momentum after collision. This is to be established. So for that we have taken the example of collision. Now we make use of Newton's third law and Newton's second law for establishing this result. So during collision, what is the interaction here? The interaction is the collision. So what is happening during collision? During collision, the force exerted on one due to two, force exerted on one due to two is equal and opposite to force exerted on two due to one. This is what is called as Newton's third law. Force exerted on one due to two is equal and opposite to force exerted on two due to one. This is according to Newton's third law of motion. Now we will make use of Newton's second law. What is Newton's second law? Force is directly proportional to rate of change of momentum. So force on one leads to change in momentum of first particle. Force on two leads to change in momentum of second particle. So I will write first. Using Newton's second law, F12 is equal to change in momentum of first particle. Look at this. Change in momentum of first particle. dP1 by dt or delta P1 by delta T. Similarly, F21 is the force on 2 due to 1. Force on 2 leads to change in momentum of second particle. Delta P2 by delta T. This is using Newton's second law. Now substitute these values in the above equation. Substituting this here and this one here. So we can get therefore we get delta P1 by delta T is equal to minus of delta P2 by delta T. See, I am making use of vector notation. Delta P1 by delta T equal to delta P2 by delta T with negative sign. So delta T cancels. So when delta T cancels, this implies change in momentum of first particle is equal and opposite to change in momentum of second particle. Now let us write what is change in momentum. You see, change in momentum of first particle is defined as final momentum of first particle minus initial momentum of first particle. That gives us change in momentum of first particle. What is final momentum of first particle? m1 v1 vector minus initial momentum of first particle m1 u1, m1 v1 minus m1 u1. This becomes the change in momentum of first particle is equal to minus, I am keeping minus as it is, change in momentum of second particle. Again, final momentum minus initial momentum of second particle. See, final momentum of second particle m2 v2 vector, final momentum minus initial momentum m2 u2 vector. Now you can simplify. This implies m1 v1 vector minus m1 u1 vector is equal to minus of m2 v2 minus of minus plus m2 u2 vector. Now club those final momentum on one side, initial momentum on another side. So take this m1 v1 and m2 v2 on one side. So it becomes m1 v1, take it this side, this becomes plus m2 v2 is equal to, take this minus m1 u1 this side. So that becomes m1 u1 vector plus m2 u2. Yes. Now look at this. This m1 v1 gives us total momentum. Okay, m1 v1 gives us p1, momentum of the first particle. What does this give you? p2, momentum of the second particle before, okay, after collision. This you can write it as p1 dash, p2 dash, m1 v1, m2 v2. This gives you p1 dash plus p2 dash, that is final momentum after collision, equal to p1 vector plus p2 vector. So right hand side gives you total momentum before collision. Total momentum before collision, look at this. Total momentum before collision is m1 u1 plus m2 u2 is equal to total momentum after collision. What is total momentum after collision? m1 v1 plus m2 v2. Thus, total momentum of the system remains conserved. That's how we establish. Thus, total momentum before collision becomes equal to total momentum after collision. So this is the result. So total momentum before collision is equal to total momentum after collision. So total momentum before collision is p1 vector plus p2 vector, and total momentum after collision is p1 dash vector plus p2 dash vector. So thus total momentum of the system remains conserved. Thus total momentum of the system remains conserved, constant or conserved. So the interaction here is collision, that you have to note. The interaction here is collision. So with the help of Newton's third law and Newton's second law, we can establish the law of conservation of momentum. Law of conservation of momentum with the help of example of collision. So in the next video, we will solve very important applications of law of conservation of momentum, which are related to Newton's third law also, and we will solve some numerical problems, very important numerical problems in the next session. Thank you. Have a nice day.